Hi, Lee. Welcome to our show.
Hello, Savannah. Welcome to our show. How did that become our opening phrase?
I think that I just started it like in episode 1 or 2, and it just made me laugh every time, and now this is where we are.
Yeah. No, the way you started it was by saying, hello, Lee, welcome to your show.
You're exactly right, and you said it's not your show, it's our show.
And I rebuked you because it was not my show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're right.
And it became our show. But it's now everyone that's listening. It's all of our connection with one another.
It's really about community, you know what I mean?
It's really all about community. Hello, friends.
Exactly. Is that how No Small Endeavor starts, right? I can hear you saying hello, friends, and I don't know why.
I say that a lot in like emails and stuff like that.
Emails, that's what it is.
Hello, my friends, yes.
Lee, how's it going? How are you feeling at the moment?
I'm feeling well. Lovely day here in Nashville, Tennessee. Sunshiny, so it's quite nice. How are you feeling?
How did you enjoy all the sugar that we've had today?
Oh, it's been good. It's been good, yes.
We started with a donut from Fox's Donut Den.
Yeah, here in Nashville, Tennessee.
And then we just had Sophie, our producer, made sesame Rice Krispie treats.
Yeah.
With a matcha glaze.
Yeah. What's not to like about any of that?
I'm jittery with all of the sugar.
No, I eat way too much sugar for that to make me jittery.
They're like, literally, they're going to think this isn't fast forward because I'm going to be talking so fast, which I'm thrilled about. Ree, it's the sugar. Every mistake that I make, blame it on the sugar.
Yes.
What have you been reading, watching, listening to lately? Give me some TV. Don't give me the intellectual stuff.
Oh, let's see. We're watching Department Q right now.
Is it not so good?
Well, I'm not sure yet.
Okay. What are you questioning?
We're like in episode 6. We just finished episode 6. Well, you've got obviously some bad person that's doing this outrageous thing to one of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
You know, well, I mean, this show comes out early, so this is not I'm not giving away something, but imprisoning, kidnapping and holding this person captive for years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what are they up to? And it almost seems unrealistic. That part of the story seems unrealistic so far.
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
And then, what's his name? Matthew Good?
Matthew Good.
Who I like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like he's overacts a little in the first couple of episodes. He's so anxious, and he's so snarky, and he's such a difficult human being. It's like almost a little difficult to believe that anyone is that much of a you-know-what.
Of a jerk?
Yeah, that wasn't the word.
When we get into the reviews...
That's not the word that I was going to use.
When we get into the reviews, we'll talk about why you can't say it.
But I knew that if I used the word, I'd get bleeped.
Exactly, because Lee is being censored on his own show. Matthew Good overacting is a very hot take. We love it. But I think that I am very drawn to those grouchy characters.
Well, I don't mind grouchy, but...
And he's a total jerk, like on the whole season.
On the show, yeah. You began to see a few more sober-minded moments in him as you get into episode 4, 5, and 6.
Right.
But yeah, he's definitely a jerk.
It's been a while since I watched it, but doesn't he also go to therapy in it? And so you're seeing his therapy sessions. That was also very interesting to me. Yeah. Well, good for you for watching some TV. I'm proud. I have been watching season 2 of Paradise.
Okay, well, I've never watched season 1 of Paradise, so...
Let me set the scene.
Okay.
Do you know Sterling K. Brown?
I don't think so.
This man is probably the love of my life besides my husband. I love him so much, and he stars in the show alongside James Marsden. And the overall plot of the show is that there is this horrible event that kind of mirrors a nuclear holocaust.
Okay.
It is not one, but it mirrors that. And the president of the United States and like 300 other people are swept away to live in an underground paradise in Colorado.
Yeah, I've heard about this. Yeah. I've seen the previews.
But it's not a paradise after all.
But you like it?
I love it.
Huh, okay. I may have to check it out. Paradise.
It's lovely. And in season 1, James Marsden is the president, and he is actually really charming as a president. Yeah.
Paradise.
So Sterling K. Brown is the lead, and he is the president's head of security.
Okay.
So you
Yeah.
follow his story as well, because like he's able to take his kids to this thing, but his wife wasn't able to make it. So there's like a lot of different dynamics going
Yeah.
on. So we're on season 2 of Paradise, but if you watch season 1, I will talk you all the way through it. Such a good show. I want to talk through some reviews, if that sounds good to you. All of them are very pleasant. Natalie Coleman said, I've had Casey Musgrave's song, Cup of Tea, on my head ever since this episode's response to reviews. This was when we talked about the review that said professor's going to profess to you. That was really critical of you. But then it opened up the conversation of us saying that reviews in general are hard, and it's hard to be disliked.
Yeah.
She said, like Savannah, the idea that I just have to accept that nobody is for everybody makes me want to tear my skin off. Thank you, Natalie. I agree.
But aren't you increasingly getting to where you can accept that not everyone's going to like you?
Is my tolerance growing through this podcast? Yeah. Yes.
I'm surprised it didn't grow before this podcast.
Okay, so here, the for real thing. Writing is so much safer. And
it is until your book goes out.
And actually, writing on social media, I do get negative comments occasionally. And then on Substack, I also do. But because my writing process is fairly rigorous, and I am not saying things that I do not mean when I'm writing,
you know that
the criticism it's fine. Like, if you're going to criticize me, that's okay. I'm willing to change my mind. But it's not because I was flippant with something I said.
Yeah.
On this show, it is much more in the moment. So criticism feels more valid.
Yeah.
Because I'm spitballing.
Yeah.
How does that hit you?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's because of the genre that is this kind of podcast, that one does best by trying to carry an attitude of saying, I know I may be wrong, but here's the way I see it. So at a minimum, one would hope that could help mitigate some of that kind of, pushback.
Mm-hmm.
And it become a communal conversation where we're having this one-on-one conversation, but we know everybody else, other people are listening, and that they can and do teach us other things that we haven't seen or that we have forgotten or have just flat gotten wrong sometimes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But the tone helps a lot, I think, with that kind of stuff.
I think tone helps as well.
Yeah.
But for someone like me who feels really safe when I'm liked and really safe when I haven't done anything wrong, it's very vulnerable to be in this kind of situation.
Well, pardon my name dropping, but I don't think I've mentioned this on the show, but a while back I was I think maybe I did. Did I mention?
Did you talk about Vince Gill?
Yeah, so I did mention that. It's where, I was stuck up on my bathroom where Vince had told me, look, if you're not pissing off half of everybody, then you're doing something wrong. And so that's another way to think about doing something wrong, right? Is that we're worried about where we did something wrong and the criticism that we would get with this. But, what he reminded me was, no, actually, if you're running scared of getting people upset, then you are doing something wrong. And I think that's a helpful thing for me to remind myself.
It's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've made the choice to do this.
Yeah.
And so part of it just comes with the territory.
Yeah.
But Natalie, thank you.
Thank you, Natalie.
Melissa said about our war episode. Such a great episode. I've embarrassingly never thought too much about pacifism as a Christian until listening some to Lee, both in this episode and others. This encourages me to grapple more with what I believe as a Christian. I really enjoyed hearing Lee geek out and be super passionate. Same. She didn't say Baptist voice, but she meant it. And then she said, I'm curious, Lee, would you have any suggestions of a book that is a brief history of the Crusades from a perspective of anti-war?
This is terrible. The only one I can think of is one I wrote.
Oh my gosh, yes. Lee, self-promote, do it.
Yeah. But it's out of print, but you can get an ebook version of it. It's just called Who is My Enemy? And the subtitle is Questions American Christians Must Face About Islam and Themselves. And so in the middle, I talk some about the Crusades.
Lee, you gave that book to me.
Did I?
It's in print. Or is that just an extra copy you had at home?
That's an extra copy I had at home.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Melissa, if you're in Nashville for real, I have it. I've read it. I'll give it to you. And yes, Lee, you are the authority on this, so let's do that.
No, I'm not the authority on this.
The last comment, which I really loved, is from Adam W. Godfrey. And this was on the war episode where you swore, I think 3 times, and we bleeped it out.
I didn't swear. I used a crass term.
Okay, sure. I don't know what the difference is, but I'm into it. And Adam said, free Lee, ! Let Lee be heard. And then he said, hashtag no more censored speech.
This is Adam.
Yes.
Bless you, Adam. Peace be unto Adam.
Peace be unto you, Adam.
That's what I say. Peace be unto Adam.
And on that note, let's start the show.
No, wait. Before we start the show, I have something to say about that. Isn't it fascinating that it's like the moralisms that we get hung up with, where we have to, because I said, and we'll just go ahead and bleep out that word, but because I said that there is a social expectation that it will be bleeped. But meanwhile, we can have unbridled greed and conspicuous consumption that doesn't ever get bleeped.
Mm-hmm.
We can have
conspiracy theories,
sectionalism and partisanship. We can have lies. We can have warring. And that stuff kind of goes under the flag of go Jesus and go USA. But we've got to bleep someone saying.
I do feel that the bleeping also might be for the sake of distributors for podcasts.
No, I know. Yeah, it's part of the system.
Yeah.
Our moralistic system.
Oh, so you're not just critiquing this situation. It's actually the system as a whole that would be marked as explicit, whereas these other things would not.
Yeah. No, I'm more concerned with that.
Okay.
Yeah. It's the system and the moralisms that train us to think, pay attention to this, but all this other stuff is fine.
That is a classic camp critique. And we love it.
So on that note, let's start
the show. Welcome to the Subtext, where we go beneath the headlines and beyond the obvious. I'm Savannah Locke.
And I'm Lee Camp.
If you like the show, here's your official permission to gas us up. Follow, rate, and drop a review wherever you're listening now. 5 stars if you're feeling generous. We might even read it on the show. You can watch full episodes on YouTube and Spotify and stay connected on Instagram at The Subtext Show, at Savannah_Locke, and at Lee C. Camp. Got thoughts, questions, hot takes? Send them our way in the DMs. Hey, do you know the phrase gas us up?
Gas us up. I do not know that.
Gonna gas them up.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
You should start using that. See how it lands.
We'll see. Yeah. Maybe if I need to.
But you can surmise the meaning.
Impress one of my sons or a student. Yeah. Gas them up.
Exactly. It actually felt natural when you just did it. More so
gas
than like
them up, boys.
Would.
Let's gas them up.
But then all of a sudden it sounds like we're talking about a Ford F-150.
Yeah.
Yeah. You really need to be like, gas them up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
Nicely. Well, today we're talking about the big question for me is social media a calling? That might
social
switch.
Media a calling.
And it might switch. The thesis question may switch as we get into it.
Yeah.
But I overall want to explore this idea because actually a Subtext listener direct messaged me this video and said, please do an episode of the Subtext on this.
Interesting.
And as I watched through the video, I started making notes of all of the different points that she was making that would be interesting and worth exploring.
Yeah.
So you watched the video.
Yes.
Correct?
I did.
Do you want me to do a brief summary
Please.
and then go into it, or did anything stand out to you?
You please. I think it'd be good if you did a summary.
Okay, so we're going to try to play a couple of seconds of the clip as well. But in this video, a social media influencer named Danielle Walter celebrates that she, quote, took her life from one thing and made it into another.
I took my life from one thing and I made it into another based on what I wanted and what I felt like my calling was.
So she used to be in tech sales, but then she started doing this social media thing on the side when she was going on different dates with guys, and it took off. And then she said when she started making content through being an influencer, she dreamed about doing that full time. And she said that she felt like it was her purpose. And she said that the reason she was able to make her dream come true is because she actually believed she could do it. Whereas she says, quote, I think that's why so many people have dreams and they're just dreams is because you don't actually believe you can do this. And she said that content creation allows her to have a bigger impact in the world than her prior role in tech sales. So this was like a 2 or 3 minute video going through that and exploring that. And there's a lot to chew on there.
There is a lot to chew on there.
Anything stand out to you specifically?
Well, a lot. But I mean, so many. I mean, it is, I think, pretty obviously true that we can have a dream, and that if we don't believe that it can be true, then we will get what we believe, right? If you believe you can't do something, then most likely you're not going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you believe you can do something, then in many cases you will be able to. Not in all cases by any means, but in a lot of cases that is what's needed for that to come true. And so I think that's pretty obviously true.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily, the language that she used in the video of seeing it as a calling, I didn't necessarily resonate with.
Yeah, that was also one of the initial things that stood out to me is, can social media influencing be a calling? Which then led me to say, what is a calling? And how is a calling different from a job or vocation? Or are these things synonyms for each other?
Yeah,
Have you ever taught about this before?
I have.
Okay, talk me through. What's a calling, vocation?
Well, the way I see it, and I think I'm riffing off of what other people have said before me, is that I think of, in the New Testament at least, there's really only one calling, and that calling is to seek to bear the image of God in oneself and to allow that image of God to flourish in oneself. And it reminds me of this anecdote in Thomas Merton's Seven Storey Mountain, which is his autobiography that he wrote, I think when he was like 27, which is amazing. But he's talking about when he was raised in a kind of atheist, secular context in France, and he comes to the U.S. at some point, and he's grappling with whether or not to come to faith. And I may be messing this story all up because it's been years since I read this book, but as I recollect the story, he's talking to this guy that he really respects, and they're talking about what he's going to do with his life. And he asks him, somebody asked Thomas Merton, what do you want to do with your life? And he says, I think I want to be a writer. And he said, what do you think I should do? And the guy replied, he said, you should do what every human being ought to want to do, to be a saint. And that's, he didn't mean that with a kind of religious, drippy language, drippy religious sense, but that what we're all called to be, to quote Irenaeus, 2nd century, the glory of God is a human being fully alive. That's what we're all called to. That's our vocation. And then the question becomes, okay, as we seek to follow that vocation, we all have different gifts, and we employ those gifts towards the same vocation. And so that's the way I think about it. And there's lots more to be said about that, but that's the way I think about it, is that we all have one vocation. There are a variety of gifts, and all of the gifts are to be employed for the good, in the New Testament language, for the body of Christ and the good of the world. And that's thus living out our calling. Jobs, on the other hand, may or may not overlap with the employment of one's gifts towards one calling. Even the Apostle Paul apparently was a tent maker, right? He had a vocational, he had a side job to pay his bills. And so a lot of people don't have the luxury of having a job that necessarily allies with their gifts or their sense of calling. And some people do. And so if you can, then all the better. But that's kind of in brief the way I think about all that.
Yeah. Where do you feel like dreams come into play? Because something she talked about was how maybe your dreams are your purpose. So maybe the dreams that you have for the life that you could create, for her, it was being an influencer. Maybe that's your purpose. What do you make of that?
I would say let's dwell hard on the maybe.
Okay.
that may be true.
That's a savage response, but yeah, let's run with it. Let's do it. Please.
Why was that savage? I think that's so obviously true.
That the maybe part is obviously the contingency in that
Yeah,
sentence.
right.
Yes. And let's say that the claim is your dreams are your purpose. What would you make of that with no maybe?
I would say that's a dangerous claim.
Do I love how I've just learned to kind of like pin you back and be like, you will answer this. Like, you will not get out with random words.
Well, nuance is always our friend.
Yes. So
Yes.
it's a dangerous claim.
It's a very dangerous claim to say my dreams are my calling. Because, I mean, I was thinking about this because we recently did a show on vocation. And one of the things that we did at the beginning of that show was we talked about Mary Oliver's poem, The Summer's Day. And this beautiful poem where at the end she says, so tell me, what are you going to do with your one wild and precious life? But that's at the very end of the poem. And the first part of the poem is about a summer day, and where she says, she basically is saying, pay attention. And you see the black bear over here and the swan and the grasshopper, and she gets down in the grass and she's describing the grasshopper. And then she says something like, I don't exactly know what it means to pray, but I know what it is to pay attention. And and then she finally gets to, so tell me what it is you plan to do with your one wild and precious life. And so as I was reflecting upon that poem, it occurs to me that she gives us a great paradigm for thinking about reflecting upon what we're going to do with our life. And that is the first thing you got to learn to do is pay attention and to see. And if you can't pay attention and you can't see, you've screwed yourself in thinking that your dream is your purpose. Because we have to diagnose our dreams and figure out whether they're really poorly formed dreams, whether they are disordered desire, inordinate desire, or is this some sort of true good dream? And then it may be your calling, right? That's why the maybe is so important, because it's a process of discernment, I think.
Of prudence.
Of prudence.
If you will.
If
of
you
wisdom.
will. Yeah, of wisdom, yes.
I did think of how wild it is that when I got my dog Prudence in 2020, I would have had no idea how much I would say her name now in this show. And maybe that name is a gift to me,
Yes.
to always be saying out loud.
I know. It's too bad that I didn't name our dog one of the 4 cardinal virtues, but no,
then we would just need 2 more dogs to round out the whole thing.
Instead, we have Otis.
Instead, you have Otis.
Otis, yes.
Who was Otis named after?
No one.
Oh, okay.
It just sounded like a good dog name.
It is a good dog name.
It's a great dog name.
Yeah. I didn't know if it was like Otis Redding or something like that.
No.
I think love the language of diagnosing your dreams. That's great language.
Did I use that language? Did I use that phrase? Or did you make that up?
You said we need to diagnose.
That is good.
No, brilliantly. And I think that process is the process of discernment, which is being able to name that when everyone is 9 years old, they see a pop star and they say, that's what I want to be that's my dream. But is that really the dream, or is that what you've been taught should be the dream?
Right.
How are our dreams informed by the culture that we live in? And not just culture at large, but our family culture, our church cultures,
right.
our friendship groups. And so I think that there's a lot to that statement of maybe your dreams are your purpose. I think there are probably hints of all of our dreams that point to a deeper purpose, that we're drawn to them for some reason. I've never been drawn to be an accountant. I've never been drawn to be a famous accountant because there's something about that just doesn't connect with me at all. So there are probably parts of dreams, even fantasy dreams, that do point back to something deep in ourselves, and then probably other ones that we're not drawn to because, we don't relate to them. But I think the diagnostic piece is where we're able to have conversations around that, which is what matters.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree.
My dad and my sister are both accountants. I'm not hating on them.
My dad is also an accountant, was also an accountant. I come from a long line of accountants.
I do too.
Yeah. Grandfather, father, uncle, cousin, brother.
Good, steady people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's one of the things I think is always important in thinking about purpose and what we want to do with our lives, is that to ask questions about what kind of goods does this work contribute to the world. And it took me a long time to realize because I didn't understand accounting, the great goods that accounting provides to the world. I mean, they save us from a lot of trouble, and they
Mhm.
save us from a lot of people getting screwed.
Mhm.
And so, and when accounting goes bad, it has really negative consequences to it.
Mhm.
And so, a lot of things sometimes that we don't think of as providing true social goods actually do,
Mhm.
because we don't understand them or we haven't paid attention to the history of them and so forth.
Yeah. And we also just have, I think, sometimes values that glorify certain expressions
Yeah.
of contribution over others.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is wild. Okay, I want to talk about some of the comments to this video because I think it could also lead to fascinating conversations. She has now turned off the comments to this video. So these have since disappeared. But before she had turned off the comments of the video, one person said, quote, "Social media is not a calling. It's the easy way. I love your content and messages, but my life is not impacted by it." That feels like a very strong response to this video.
It sounds a little unkind to me, but I mean, who knows? Well, again, if we go back to, I want to keep insisting that there's only one calling. And so I wouldn't even call social media calling. I wouldn't call writing a book calling. I wouldn't call being a professor a calling. There's only one calling. And
Which
then
is
there's
to bear the image of God.
Yeah. And then there's my sense of my giftedness.
Yeah.
And how can my giftedness contribute to that kind of work in the world and bear witness to the kingdom of God and so forth. But, can social media be something by which one bears witness to the kingdom of God? Surely it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that one ought to have a very sober-minded assessment of what is happening in social media. And so that seems maybe, I mean, I don't know this social media influencer. Maybe she's thought about that a whole lot. I don't know. But I think very often it seems to me that a lot of the people in the social media world have insufficiently considered really what's going on in the social media world. And the way in which, going back to the Mary Oliver poem about learning to pay attention, I mean, we all know that social media, the platforms themselves were engineered to distract us, right? And they were not designed to make us reflect carefully about beauty, truth, and goodness. They were designed to distract us. And because the more time they can keep eyeballs on the screen and scrolling, then the more money they're going to make. And so that means it's very difficult to bear witness to something that's good and true and beautiful on those kinds of platforms. It's not impossible. It's quite possible, but it's difficult. And I think if we don't take that into account, then we haven't done enough diagnosing.
Yeah. Going back to the diagnosing language, I love. Another comment said this: "I'm a speech language pathologist working with children with special needs. I like to think that I make a small impact, a small difference in someone's life in some small way every day. And when I take a sick day, I actually feel bad that my students don't receive their services that day because I am homesick. I come to your page and social media in general to brain rot. Our definitions of impact are very different."
Yeah. I respect that commentary a good bit in the sense that, at least from the level of thinking about what we mean by impact, right? I mean, what does it even mean to have impact?
Literally, that was one of my questions on here. What does it mean to have a good impact in the world?
Yeah, right. So, typically, a word impact is often used the way the word freedom is like people use it all the time, but they don't ask the question of towards what end and for what purpose, right? And so you can be Genghis Khan and have a lot of impact upon the world. But what kind of impact? But what I'm wondering about, though, is that you do a good bit of social media stuff. And so how do you think about this?
Lee, this is why it feels so personal.
Yeah.
I was hoping that you would just clarify some things for me. I really hope that people can sense that below my ego, which is definitely there, I am trying to give gifts to the world when I write and when I put out music and all of that. That ultimately inside of my heart is I hope that this contributes to someone's spiritual formation in a helpful way. And I also know that this is such a random memory to pop up, but with the first agent I ever talked to like 10 years ago, who wanted me to write a book, she said, "I went through your social media and I assessed it." And she said, "The posts that show you in your face when you have hair and makeup on, do better. She said, keep doing more of that. And she was not being hateful. She was just being data driven. And I remember thinking, oh, how I look on socials matters. And the hooks that I use at the beginning of videos matters. And there's a part that you play the game in order to get the exposure. And so that's all ego work. It really is. And there's like a data piece to it that I think is probably smart. But then there's also a piece that I'm like, this is self-serving. And I don't know that there's any pure way of doing socials. I don't know that there is. And I do it. And so for me, the process that I go through, which I've talked about 5 million times on the show, is I have a list of things that I ask myself. I make sure that I don't post anything out of emotion. I give it a day, if not more days, before I share things that I've written or recorded, in order to protect myself from doing something reactionary. And thank God I have done that, because there have been things that I've made that if I had posted them just wouldn't have been helpful. It would have been for myself, or it would have been to like garner some sort of attention on the internet or enrage people. And so there are things that I try to do to curb that, but it's not pure. Like it's messy. And so that's how I feel about it. I don't know that there's like a clear ending to that, but what do you think about what I said?
Why do you do it? You alluded at least to why, but talk more about why you do it.
I hope the reason I do it is to share something that helps people. I hope that that's it. And that feels true to me because I just got a direct message from this guy who lives in Scotland. This was like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. And he said, it was on a Saturday night, hey, Savannah, I wanted to let you know that I'm getting baptized tomorrow in my church. And he said, I didn't think that I could be Christian, but reading your writing has helped me see that there's a place in Christianity for me. And when I wept when I read it, because I thought that's what I'm doing this. But then there's also parts where, and I'm going to show my own hypocrisy, that a couple of months ago, I posted this thing, a picture of me and Todd. There was a trend going on that said, show yourself in 2016, show yourself now. And I put it in the stories. And I just picked 2 pictures of me and Todd and put it 10 years apart. And someone said, you're aging in reverse. And I was like, heck yeah. I was like, thank you. And that's my ego. And so I think that for me, like, when I'm trying to answer you, I'm wanting to be honest and for real.
Yeah.
And both of those things are true.
Yeah.
And I think if I got off the internet entirely, I'd be better off for it.
Yeah.
And I know that I wouldn't have gotten my book deal if I was off the internet.
Yeah.
What do you do with that?
Yeah. I mean, it reminds me of years ago, I had a mentor that I had an idea that I knew would put me in front of more people. And so I told him about the idea and I said, I'm trying to discern whether to do this kind of thing. And I said, what do you think? And he said, why don't you go inventory the 7 deadly sins and see which of the 7 deadly sins would be inculcated or stirred up in you if you decide to go do this. And so I thought, well, that's a dang good question. And so I went and did it, and I wrote out everything I could imagine under all 7 deadly sins. And I had a good long list under all of them except 1. And under 6 of them, I thought, yeah, I can see how in all 6 that all these would be stirred up. And so the time came for where we were going to sit and talk through that. And so I read through it all. And then I looked at him and said, so what do you think? And he said, well, that's good. He said, now you know what to look out for. So if you think it's a good thing to do, then you just go do it. And look out for all these things. And then he went on to say,
that's not bad.
He said something like, none of us ever operate out of pure motives. We all have impure motives. You're always dealing with impure motives. The question is how to try to do something that's good, or what do you think the next right thing to do is, and do it to the best of your ability. knowing that your motives are mixed.
Yeah.
And you're not special. You've got impure motives. I've got impure motives. We've all got impure motives.
Yeah.
It's when you act as if you don't have mixed motives. That's really the problem. But you're still trying in the middle of all the mixed motives to try to do something that's good or that's helpful. And so I just found that incredibly helpful advice.
Wait, that's so good. Yeah, because I think I struggle a lot, even with this, and I'm so happy we're having this conversation, but I think it can be applied to a myriad of situations to me, it feels like unless I have pure motives, I shouldn't do something at all. And I think that's what stops me a lot of the time from following what I feel is inside of me to even doing this podcast. I remember thinking, is this my ego speaking? Like, do I really need to be having these conversations? Is this going to actually be helpful? Or am I just doing this to be in public or whatever? And for me, I had a difficult time figuring out if it was okay to even do it because it's public facing, because my motives are murky.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you.
Did you ever feel that with No Small Endeavor or your books or you speaking publicly?
Absolutely.
Or all the millions you've made along the way?
For sure. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know how anybody ever stands up in front of people and you don't struggle with that kind of stuff, right? In last episode we were taping, you talked about Al Andrews, and I remember somebody telling me that an artist here in town who had gone to see Al was telling me one time about having talked with Al, and he had asked Al something like, so of all the people that you've talked to kind of in the entertainment world, what's the one takeaway that you have? And Al said something like, that the human heart is not made for celebrity. And I thought, dang, isn't that the truth? I mean, God, it messes, the smallest bit is always a potential mess with you. But at the same time, one of the things I've also learned is that it's just whatever measure of that is also just a pain in the rear. And it's exhausting and it's so much work. And it was kind of like, it would be a lot more fun potentially to do other things, you know? But I think that if you do have some sort of sense that I'm trying as a person and I'm trying in community to try to do something that's good and beautiful and true, it doesn't really matter if it's public facing or not. If you're trying to do something good and beautiful and true and good, then do it and just do it to the best of your ability with whoever you're doing it with and see what joy comes from it, and try not to think about it too much.
Yeah. Try not to think about it too much really should be tattooed on my body somewhere.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of paralysis comes from that. Yeah, but I think that's a really helpful context. And to also just name, even if the motivations are not crystal clear, and by that, I don't mean like evil, but just crystal clear, even in understanding that it's okay to still take a step forward.
Yeah.
And when I think about all of the artists and the authors and people who have spoken that put themselves out there, probably with their own egos involved, but also with good intentions that have impacted my life, I'm so grateful that they did that. And I hope that kind of impact can be made through this podcast, through my book or social media or whatever. And there's always going to be murkiness in terms of like ego work involved or shadow sides, but there can also be a lot of
good. I mean, it's interesting that we're talking about this because I was just rereading a lot of Dag Hammarskjöld's book, Markings. And have we ever talked about him?
Those words once again. What is that last name? Say it again.
So Dag Hammarskjöld.
Dag Hammarskjöld.
He's Swedish. He was I think he was the second Secretary General of the United Nations in the middle of the 20th century, and probably the most famous of the Secretary Generals of the UN ever. And so when he died, there were in his personal effects a manuscript of a book that he had been writing over 20 years of his life. I mean, he was internationally known figure. He probably died in an assassination in a plane crash.
You told me about him before. Yes.
Yeah. So they found this book called Markings in his thing where he basically, it's aphorisms, observations about life and about, all sorts of wise stuff. And I just love that book, and I go back to it regularly. And I didn't have anything to read Saturday morning, and I was just trying to rest for the weekend, and I picked it up and I reread a bunch of it. But one of the things that struck me this time about reading it is that he says at one point he's being very hard on himself, and he often is very hard on himself. And he was raising almost some of the very same questions you're asking about his ego and why does he want to write anything down? Why is he even journaling this stuff?
Yeah.
What's his ego involved in, arrogance and self-focus and all this kind of stuff? And should I ever even write this stuff down? And after I read that particular passage, I thought, I am thankful to God that you did, because this has nourished me for decades. I love this book. And he's one of the people that I will oftentimes think, I hope in the resurrection, I get to spend some time with Dag Hammarskjöld, right? And so we can struggle with all of that stuff, but if we can at least try to just lean into trying to be of use to others, then in spite of ourselves, oftentimes our work can be a blessing to other people.
Yeah, that's so good. Whenever you say in the resurrection, I always want to name, how crazy is that we believe that?
Yeah.
That we're like, oh, God is literally going to raise this whole thing up from the ashes, and we're going to get to talk to people like Dag.
Yeah. I hold on to that.
I do too. Yeah, that's good. Well, your person is Dag, mine is Buechner. So Buechner has a quote around this that says, the place God calls you to, which I know that you would not love calling there, but let's just say, for the sake of it, the place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. I'm sure you've heard that quote before.
And I've used it, yeah.
And you've used it.
A great
How do
line.
you feel about it?
That's a great line.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I use it in my lecture I do with students on vocation, even though I say all that kind of stuff that I've already said, but still is something beautiful about that, right? Is that the human calling is to be a human being fully alive. Our particular callings as individuals, our specific kind of sense of what this looks like for us vocationally, it has more specificity to it. And in that regard, that kind of quote can be very helpful, I think.
And I love the idea of the joy, like your deep gladness, like what's bringing you joy and what's making you alive and giving you hope. And how can that meet what's needed in the world at the moment? And I think that is something that can curb the self-centeredness when you're considering the needs.
Yeah. I would also say that I was talking to a colleague right before we were going to do this show on vocation, and she said, what are you doing the show on? And I said, vocation. She said something like, she was kind of being snarky, and she said something like, yes, the perpetual topic of conversation among the well-to-do, never mindful of the impossibility of the guy flipping burgers to ask such questions.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's a really important thing to remember, right?
So
it's that it is a matter of privilege to get to ask these kinds of questions.
Yes.
And to dream such dreams, because a lot of people in the world can't dream such dreams.
And wouldn't even have a concept of being in a position where they could ask, oh, what do I want to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That surely has to be fairly new in history, too.
That we can ask such questions. Yeah, because, I mean, it kind of goes back to the thing with Aristotle about on wealth. It's like excessive poverty, all you're thinking about is how you're going to feed yourself and feed your family, right? Whereas too much wealth brings its own sort of corruption, potential corruption of the self. And so there's this kind of sweet spot where in that sweet spot you can focus on virtue and you can focus upon your sense of purpose and your telos and so forth, and how to grow and mature as a human being into the best version of yourself. And so it's impossible to separate these kinds of questions from economic questions and considerations.
Agreed. Because, yes, I'm so thankful that you said that. I think I had made some note on there, but we skipped right past it. Like, to even be considering this already requires some flexibility that most people in the world don't have.
Yeah. Most, I don't know, but at least a lot.
Many.
Yeah.
Does that...
Yeah, many.
Let's parse out those words, Lee. Let's parse them on out. Okay, did we miss anything around vocation that you think would be helpful for this conversation that you maybe did for your lectures? Or does everyone pretty much know what they want to do with their lives now?
I think the only other thing that I had thought about is knowing that we were going to talk about this. I started thinking about Jackson Brown's song, "The Pretender." Do you know?
Nice.
You know Jackson Brown? Yeah. And I love that old song. It's kick in the pants, every time I listen to that song, read the lyrics, because the question of vocation and the question of what you're going to do with your life it is, even though there is a sort of element of privilege to it, it's like if you are in that space of where you can ask the question and you don't ask the question, then I think you're throwing away something. And that, it does disturb me that probably a lot of people think more about what they're going to do on their vacation than they think about what they're going to do with their life. And so it's an indispensably important set of questions that we really should be grappling with a whole lot.
Any tips or tricks into how someone might discern that?
First would be just to start. I've used this so many contexts from the philosopher Alistair McIntyre, who asks a lot about what's it mean to live a good life, and he says that a good life is a life spent seeking the good life for humankind. And then he goes on and growing, sustaining, developing, cultivating the virtues that make that pursuit possible. And so that's the way to start, is to sit down and ask yourself the question, well, what do I think it means to live a good life? And then to take a step in that direction, and then take another step in that direction. And by I've seen this, and I do this with cohorts with No Small Endeavor. It's amazing when you give people some basic constructs of moral philosophy and a bit of theology to frame it up, and you give them a question like that to ask about themselves. The impact it can have on people's lives by just saying, okay, I'm gonna have the courage to ask myself these questions, and then I'm going to have the courage to take the next step. And that's where I would suggest you start.
That's a great place to start. Yeah, I'm happy we end on a practical note. Well, thanks for having the convo, Lee.
Thank you, Savannah. Thanks for sharing.